for listening to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, keeping you up to date with the latest in American soccer. And don't forget to subscribe.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jake Watroba, and welcome to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast. Joining me today is Stephen Jodaran and Armand Kafai. On this episode, we chat FC Cincinnati with Charlie Hatch. Please make sure you follow the show on Twitter at Uncle Sam Soccer Pod. Make sure you subscribe to the show anywhere you get your podcasts, and also make sure to leave us a review. Now, let's get to today's episode.
Alrighty, listeners, let's get straight to it. Joining us on the line is FC Cincinnati club reporter. You can follow him on the Twitter machine at CharlieHatch_. Charlie, how's it going? Did you get hit by the polar vortex, or were you traveling with the team?
No, I'm actually with the team, but I got a message from my parents saying it was -7, and then it snowed more, so it looks a lot nicer in Florida.
Yeah. Enjoying the preseason, huh? Jealous.
That is correct. I'm at least trying to, but...
So just talk to us about the excitement for the upcoming season. Finally here with MLS after the last several years in USL. It's kind of like winning the league. Now you're getting quote-unquote promoted. What's the excitement, and what's the conversation like within the club?
Yeah, I mean, it's never ending. I think the big mantra basically around the club is there's no off season. If you have a situation where you make it into MLS, you're told roughly around Memorial Day last year, and at that point you got to start moving forward, planning things from your branding in MLS to jerseys to who are the staff you're going to bring in, the scouts. And what's ended up happening is while the USL season was going on, there's still player recruitment for MLS. Obviously, the expansion draft and then the draft FC Cincinnati was pretty active in. So there hasn't really been any sort of downtime. And it doesn't help that there was one portion where I think in 2 weeks, 10 players were added, including draft picks. So less than a month away now from the first game. It's a lot of excitement. There's still a lot of stuff it seems like needs to happen. But there's still time to really take it in before the first home opener on St. Patrick's Day.
Charlie, can you give us an idea of what the Cincinnati sports landscape is like? Is FC Cincinnati something that can rival the Reds, the Bengals, and the Bearcats?
Yeah, I don't know how it's viewed from the outside. Internally, or at least in the city, it's a strange situation in that you've always had these two historical teams, the first team in Major League Baseball and the Reds, and then obviously the Bengals. And here comes FC Cincinnati. But if you walk around downtown or you go anywhere, you'll see FC Cincinnati stuff, whether it's the old logo, new logo. So it's definitely a place where the team can come in and fit in. They've been able to find a way to get people, whether it's youth, people interested in soccer. The city's getting younger inside of its core. So they are able to fit in. And again, you have a unique perspective where Xavier and UC both have big basketball teams. But FC Cincinnati fits in. There's no situation where it's, how are they going to manage? Is this a 3-city or a 3-sport town like Cleveland or something like that? Everyone's getting in. Everyone has its own fan base. And like I said, you'll see situations where I think FC Cincinnati had more, I think it was higher attendance on average last year than the Reds did. Obviously, the Reds played more games, but it gives you an idea that this isn't a situation where it's hot and exciting for a couple of years and fades away.
Well, the question before, you talked about this transition period where it's been ongoing and there was really no pause. What has been the biggest challenge to overcome transitioning from USL to MLS?
I guess it would just depend on whoever, whatever part of the organization it is. The biggest thing that seemed different is, or at least a lot of people on the outside have said, did you bring too many people from USL, things like that. because there were 11 players, including Fatai Alashe and Fernando Adi, who are already in MLS. But you look at the team, FC Cincinnati, when it was in USL, rather than going with a lot of young players and trying to build that way, kind of like what New York Red Bulls too would do, understandably, the team played for a championship. And so you look at the roster, the 2018 roster that won USL regular season title, and it was stacked with people who were experienced and played professionally either in MLS and other leagues. And so those people are coming up as if it was just kind of like the English Championship into the EPL, a natural transition. That's something that kind of flowed seamlessly, but at this point it's just trying to bring in the right pieces, getting everyone situated together, and then trying to finalize the roster ahead of the first season.
Charlie, can you talk about the club's expectations heading into this season? Now, obviously, it's the inaugural season for the club. You know, coming up from USL, there was the short turnaround from USL to MLS. But what are the club's expectations heading into the season? Is it kind of playoffs or bust, or is it hopefully we just kind of contend for a playoff spot and let the chips fall where they may?
But there has been Alan Koch, the head coach, hasn't come out and said this is what we're going to do and it's this or nothing. He has said, obviously competing for a championship in general. FC Cincinnati has been a team that has actively pursued championships, whether it's trying to get the Open Cup in 2017, USL, in those regards. So I think coming in with the winning mentality, the fan base is used to winning from the first 3 seasons. So looking at something where you can make the playoffs, it's definitely something that everyone would like to see. Again, I think it'll be interesting. The first couple games of the season, or the first 10 games, are against 9 playoff teams from last year. And so it's basically like seeing, where is this team? How does it stack up against the league? And then what happens from here? It just, because the team's never been in MLS, there's no real way to really gauge the team against other MLS clubs until you have those first regular season kickoffs.
Right. I mean, I think there's a lot of excitement just to see what type of atmosphere, if the club can, take over the city like you see in other Major League Soccer markets. And I think a lot of eyes are pointing to Atlanta. The question is, what type of style? How will FC Cincinnati move forward? And you're obviously with the team here in preseason in Florida. Has there been, anything that stood out to you that you would say, this could be an interesting player or a tactic that we might see going forward throughout the season?
Yeah, I think the team has a couple different angles they can go with. The first game that they played against Montreal's 1-1 draw was a 4-3-3. On Saturday, they beat Colorado Rapids 1-0 using a 3-5-2. They have the depth to do things like that. They have people that can change and rotate. The unique thing about the team is the back line is incredibly solid with people that are proven internationals. And then you look in the midfield and you have someone like Caleb Stanko, who played in Germany, who played a little bit in the Bundesliga, who's 25. He's young. He can come back to America. How will he play? They brought in Alan Cruz, who was playing for the Costa Rican national team yesterday against the U.S. He's another young guy. He's 22 years old. And then obviously bringing people in like Kendall Waston from Vancouver or Elvis Powell from Portland. Greg Garza, who's obviously a U.S. international as well. There's a lot of talent there. There's people who can get forward. This team in general has liked to play out of the back and tries to move forward, attack on the wings when they can, and always have a good spine. And so you've kind of seen that in terms of the roster recruitment and the people they've brought in.
Charlie, where does Frankie Amaya fit into all this? Does he figure to be a regular in the starting 11 when the season starts, or is he going to have to battle it out with some guys to get into that starting 11?
Yeah, there's no been expectation that's been set on him. Here's what you're going to do. Here's the role you're going to play. When I talked to Frankie, he's like, look, I want to make some appearances. I want to show people why I was the number 1 pick. The club would like to do that too, obviously. There's a decent midfield. It's not necessarily clogged. There's just people trying to figure out their way. Frankie made his first appearance on Saturday against Colorado. He played 10 minutes. So at this point, it's still trying to work him in and seeing where he fits on the roster rather than you're going to play X amount of games or make X amount of appearances from either the bench or starting.
Charlie, what is the one player you, Charlie Hatch, are excited to see this upcoming season?
One player? I don't know if I have a specific one. I think it'd be cool to see which players from the USL team can make it. There's people that you guys might not necessarily know about, like Hassan Endam has played well in USL with the Red Bulls that they brought in. I think it'll be cool to see Darren Maddox, who was brought in from DC United, who a lot of people were saying, well, why bring this guy in? You have Hadi, or how did they play when they were together previously? He's looked really good in preseason training. There's a guy named Leo Bertoni who came from Young Boys in Switzerland who's looked really good in preseason as well. So seeing those kind of guys, people that can come in, play well in the midfield or score goals like Maddox up front would definitely be something that's exciting. And I don't know if it's necessarily something that people around MLS expect, but these are either new faces or people who've been in the league that have a new opportunity to show what they can do.
Yeah, Charlie, I would say as a fan of a team, my team being Minnesota United, I can say in the inaugural season, it seemed like the greatest contributions they got in that first season were from players that featured with them in the NASL, and then you had a couple of players who were with USL and Kevin Molino. But I want to ask you about this. You talked about the draft earlier here in the interview, but I wanted to ask you, what were the team's thoughts on acquiring all of Philadelphia Union's draft picks?
Well, you look at that situation, and it's, obviously not all the picks were used. There were picks passed in the third and fourth round, but FC Cincinnati got a deal with LAFC where LAFC said, hey, we'll give you this amount of money that and a first round pick. That happened just before the draft went down. And then there was that later in that day, the trade was announced with Philadelphia. So FC, without trying to justify or explain why teams necessarily did it in this particular way, it was a situation where FC Cincinnati actually made a profit off of the players the deals between LAFC and then Philadelphia. And in addition, picked up more picks that they could use. So, that 13th pick, they brought Logan Gadula and a fullback from Wake Forest. That's somebody that might not necessarily have been there with their 16th pick, which they ended up giving to Red Bulls. But FC Cincinnati is in a different situation from everyone else just because you don't have an academy. You don't have homegrowns you can go to. And so if this is a way that you can jumpstart that and you can start bringing in younger people that might start playing a role or be part of your core down the road, that's why they went with that route. Again, it's completely understandable why everyone's like, well, why would you make that move? But they took the money essentially from one deal and then applied it to another and then got all those picks out of making such a move.
Now, Charlie, last question here. How excited is the club to be facing the Columbus Crew this upcoming season?
Yeah, it'll be fun. They actually play in a couple weeks in Charleston. But they've played before. They played in the Open Cup in 2017. FC Cincinnati won. That was cool in itself, and it's cool seeing. There were about 1,000 or so Columbus Crew fans that came down, and I think during the draft or the expansion process, when everyone was wondering if FC Cincinnati would be getting in, there's also a lot of concern where how much does Columbus impact FC Cincinnati? Is that something that's actually a thing? Would they take one over the other? The fact that Columbus Crew is still around, a lot of people in Cincinnati grew up going to Crew games. I had Crew season tickets as a kid. So the fact that they're both being able to play in the same league, that they're able to stick around, that it's a natural rivalry, the hell is real sign in between the two on Interstate 71 has always been there. So it should be exciting. I think it's something to look forward to. The fact that it's in August, there's a little bit of a wait. It's kind of frustrating, but it's something that should last around. There's no doubt that it should sell out both stadiums, and it should be something that the rest of the country, who maybe they see it as flyover country or whatever, will be able to say, look, that's true passionate rivalry between two teams that are fairly close to one another.
Charlie, we'll be looking forward to the I don't know what we're calling it, the Ohio Derby or I don't know. But anyway, thank you so much for your time today. Please tell our listeners where we can find your work and where we can find you on Twitter and anything else you may want to plug away.
Yeah, I will say, so we call it the Hell is Real Derby. That's what the fans called it, and so we're keeping that. Although Columbus Crew haven't actually come out and said anything on their social media, so I don't know what they're going to say. So we'll have to see what goes down. That's what our club has said. But yeah, you can follow me with the club at FC Cincinnati, FCCincinnati.com, or on Twitter at Charlie Hatch with an _
Wonderful, Charlie. Thank
you guys so much
for joining us here today. And I guess good luck with the preseason and the season ahead.
Thank you, and you guys as well.
Thank you. Now, there you have it, inside FC Cincinnati. Armand, you disagree with the draft picks, and you also said last year they weren't making the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, look, the picks, the expansion draft, and how the roster was built, to me, it's a little interesting. I do love the pick of Frankie Amaya. I feel like he's almost a homegrown player. You're picking up a guy at 18 to develop. I mean, I think it's a fantastic pick. But I mean, look, maybe with the expanded MLS playoffs, I could be wrong, but there's so many defensive mids on that team, and relying on USL players, I think our boy Jake knows how that ends up. I mean, you get some good players like Christian Ramirez and Miguel Ibarra, but I mean, outside of that, it's not the greatest way to go.
I can tell you, and I mentioned this in the interview, I can tell you the greatest contributors to Minnesota United's inaugural season were Christian Ramirez, Miguel Ibarra, Brent Kallman, and I get that he played in MLS for a couple of years prior to joining Minnesota United, but Kevin Molino also, who featured in USL with Orlando City, was also a pretty big contributor for the Loons. I don't know why you're so down on them. I think that they've done a very smart thing in saying we're going to defend, and like Charlie alluded to, they want to play out of the back. We're going to sign a bunch of defenders. We're going to sign some defensive midfielders, and we're not going to give up 70 some odd goals like Minnesota United did their first season. We're going to play defense, and we're going to try to grind out some results, and I think they will battle for a playoff spot, and I would not be shocked if they finish 6th or 7th in the East.
So we have the same kind of range, right? Like, you have them finishing 6, 7. I have them potentially outside looking at 8 or 9.
Yeah, you in a prior episode said they would finish 8, 9, or 10, and I said no, Armand.
So playoff bubble. Is that what we're predicting?
I don't think a 6 seed a bubble team.
Yeah, because
I guess playoff bubble. That I think there are a lot of people that think because this team hasn't spent thousands of millions of cajillions of dollars on Tam, Gam, Zam, whatever.
But they have
winger X. Yeah, but they haven't done it on a winger X, Y, and Z, and they don't have a attacking midfielder that anyone's heard of, and they're relying on USL players that everyone just assumes, this team's going to be terrible. This team's going to be at the bottom of the table with Orlando City. I don't think so. I think that they're going to be strong out of the back. They're going to have a spine, and they're going to be able to defend and play on the road some because they can defend, and I think that's going to help them in the long run.
I don't know. We'll see. I think this team could sneak up on people. This is anytime you play FC Cincinnati, it's a trap game. These are trap games, and they're going to have a pretty substantial home field advantage that a lot of the league is going to get very jealous of very quickly.
What's the home field advantage, turf?
No, they're just going to have people in their stadium.
Shots at half the league.
Yeah, put them on blast. Anyway, listeners, follow us on Twitter, UncSamSoccerPod. If you haven't listened to yesterday's episode, go back. We talked MLS transfers. Giovinco, Almiron, and Acosta, those big three.
Silly season.
Yeah, silly season. Come back tomorrow. We do the first installment of the Counterattack with Jake Watroba. And new thing here on Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, the Counterattack is going global. Till next time.